We are getting set for the divisional round of the NFL playoffs beginning on Saturday. 4 games, all of which looking pretty good for this weekend. We're going to break things down and answer your questions live here on air today to get you set for DFS and betting for the divisional round. Welcome on into the FanDuel Live Q&A. That's right here on the FanDuel Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Periscope channels. My name is Jim Sanas. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here once again by JJ Zachariason and Brandon Gadula. JJ is the editor-in-chief of numberFire and FanDuel. JJ, we have the divisional round coming up this weekend. These games looking pretty spicy. How you doing today?
I'm good. You know, last week with my bets could have gone really, really bad, but fortunately the Steelers were really, really bad. Hit that negative game script. Chase Claypool hit the over, so I was fine enough after that because, you know, the parlay that I had, J.D. McKissick didn't get involved as much as I thought.
Ronald Jones mysteriously doesn't play.
Ronald Jones decides to get injured and not play, and then Leonard Fournette does what he does, which hindsight's 2020. Obviously, I would have never picked what I picked with Leonard Fournette hitting the under if I knew that Ronald Jones wasn't going to play. But I thought it was I thought the process was right there.
I never would have had 68% exposure to Ronald Jones in DFS had I known he wasn't going to play. So great weekend all around. The fun thing about Claypool is I was overweight on him in DFS, but it did not matter because John Brown, Corey Davis, and Ronald Jones already taken a meat cleaver to all my lineups. So that was a delight. Just a straight great weekend last week. Brandon Gadula is the managing editor of numberFire.com. Brandon, we've gotten some additional, injury news. Things looking pretty okay for this weekend. Any changes for you and your thoughts on this weekend's slate of games since we last talked yesterday morning for the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast?
I still think that this is a week where whether you're playing a 2-game slate, 3-game slate, 4-game slate, to me, it's a lot of game theory. It's a lot of trying to figure out what everyone else is going to do rather than trying to project. Look at median value outcomes. So, the injury information changes some things, but I can't stress enough how much I emphasize just being okay, being different for DFS this week.
Specifically, the things that we are tracking here right now that we don't necessarily know as of yet. The Bucs running back situation still up in the air. Ronald Jones is listed as questionable for Sunday's game. We do know Leonard Fournette will start. Don't really know what his workload will be. We don't know if Jones will also be active, but we know Fournette will start. The other one is the Chiefs running back situation. Clyde Edwards-Helaire did not practice on Friday. It seems like he might not play. He was limited Wednesday, didn't practice Thursday or Friday. So still some things very much up in the air there. Then also waiting on the Saints injury report to see what the status is for Taysom Hill and Latavius Murray. So we're going to break down the games here in just a second, but first, as a reminder, we're giving away an entry into this week's Sunday Million contest over on FanDuel.com. If you want to get entered and get yourself an entry into the FanDuel Sunday Million for the Sunday contest, once again, make sure you go to YouTube. Check out the description there. Enter your email. You will be entered to win an entry into this weekend's Sunday Million contest. We'll be drawing for that later during the show. I think you have about 12 minutes left before the drawing is done. So within the next 12 minutes, get that entry in. Go to YouTube. Check out the description. Get your email entered, and we'll draw for a winner later on. We're going to go through the games here and break down our favorite bets for this weekend. But as mentioned last week, we're taking questions throughout the day here today, whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, or Periscope. We do have a question here from Aaron over on YouTube, and I want to get this one before we get into the questions or our bets for today. Aaron is asking, how would you guys rank the second tier of running backs for all 4 games from a snake draft perspective? So he's looking at Leonard Fournette, Aaron Jones, J.K. Dobbins, Devin Singletary. Brandon, I'm going to give you a second to think about this one. Again, the names are Fournette, Jones, Dobbins, Singletary. I'll go first because I can see the names and it's a lot easier. Aaron Jones to me is definitively first. I think he'd be first even if we took his season-long numbers at face value, but also it's important to remember that last year, Aaron Jones got a roll bump in the playoffs, 85% snap rate in the divisional round last year for the Packers. They got pasted in the conference championship, so a 65% snap rate there. But if we take him at face value, he's a good play. If we give him a potential playoff bump, he's a great play. So I'd say Aaron Jones definitively number 1 there. Between Singletary and Dobbins, I feel like it's Singletary for me. I don't know. He and Dobbins are effectively the same thing. They just get to the same place in very different ways. Whereas Dobbins is efficient, Singletary gets volume, but is hideously inefficient. I would probably go with both those guys above Fournette, given the ambiguity around the situation with Ronald Jones. So to me, it's Aaron Jones. I guess he's asking about Ronald Jones. That would make more sense. So I said Fournette/Jones. Idiot. Anyway, he said Fournette/Jones. Don't consider Ronald Jones for a snake draft game. We don't know. I go Singletary, Dobbins, Fournette. Brandon, how would you rank those guys?
So for a snake draft, I mean, I've rattled this around in my head. I thought it was Aaron Jones as well, based on the information you gave me.
My bad, Aaron. I read that wrong.
I would say for a snake draft that implies a smaller field of competition, I'd probably have to go Singletary number 1 just for the floor. Mm-hmm. And then I would go with Dobbins and then Fournette just because we don't know the extent. Although I think you could easily make the case for Fournette in the event that Jones is very, very limited or out.
That's the one upside here. The reason I didn't go that way was because there's less incentive to be different in this format. But I think your thought process makes sense. Like for DFS, like if we're talking a Saturday through Sunday slate where we won't know Ronald Jones' status before lock, I think there's more incentive to go Fournette there because you can late swap to Antonio Brown is $100 more if you have Fournette in your flex. So I think Fournette in the flex for Sunday only or for Saturday through Sunday is viable. For snake drafts, it's a bit tougher. I want to ask you, JJ, about Devin Singletary and J.K. Dobbins because it's tough. Like if I pull up here, I have this on the sheet here, my handy-dandy disorganized sheet. We look at the shares here for Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and Devin Singletary at their most relevant sample. They all get the same number of yards. It's just a very different route. If you had to pick between Singletary and Dobbins, where are you going between those two?
I'm actually going to go Dobbins only because I do like the matchup straight up a little bit more. I mean, for what it's worth, I don't think you need to like let that drive your decision making. I think you can a little bit more because it's at the extreme for Leonard Fournette with the Saints rush D. But in general, it's not like it's that big of a deal. But I just like the touchdown equity potential more for Dobbins. Singletary, obviously without Moss there. He should get the opportunity or see more of those looks, but I have a little bit more fear with Singletary close to the end zone than I do with J.K. Dobbins, and I think that's what really would shift my lean there. But at the same time, obviously, Singletary is likely going to see a little bit more volume through the air, but then the efficiency kind of might end up canceling that out a little bit. So I'd lean Dobbins, but I do think it's close.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, they're kind of the same, to be fully honest. So
we can also see Josh Allen more involved in the red zone too.
Yeah, he ran 11 times last week, which is most since week 7. So, I mean, he's already involved to begin with, but if he gets a bump, that could be pretty good. So we're going to go game by game here, same as we did last week. We'll get back to the questions after we go game by game, and we're going to do the same betting competition we had last week, which naturally – your kind host won. 1-0-0 here so far. Same thing as the snake draft where I got to a hot start and then quickly tumbled
back. At least the playoffs are only 4 weeks long, so
right. So I'm going to go 3-0, baby. Yeah. Like there's no other way to think about this. In other words, I am due for regression this week. So what could go wrong? The way this works, we each get 3 bets and 5 units to allocate. We'll go through our bets, go game by game, let you know how we feel about those via the units. The better you feel about the bet, the more units you can put on it. And the first game here is the Rams and Packers. We actually all have a bet in this game. The Packers, 6.5-point favorites. Total here is 45.5. I'm going to start things off here with you, JJ, because you have a bet in this game on the Packers side of things. What are you seeing within this one?
Yeah, so Aaron Rodgers' passing yards line is 257.5 yards. I'm taking the under. It was minus 112. I don't know what it's at right now.
It is still minus 112, so you're good.
Yeah, so I'm going to put 2 units down on that. So Rodgers failed to reach that 258-yard mark in 6 games this year, and the Rams have allowed it only 4 times this year, and they haven't allowed it since week 7, for what it's worth. So I mean, a lot of that really comes down to the fact that they have the best secondary in football, no matter really how you look at it. numberFire's adjusted expected points model definitely has them as by far the best secondary in football. But then on top of that, the Packers are favorites. The over-under is not significantly high. We're looking at probably a coldish weather game. So, maybe they lean on the run a little bit more, or at the very least, I think that there's some fear at least as to how that translates for LA and Jared Goff in particular. And so I could just see this. I just feel pretty confident given the fact that this isn't that far off from Aaron Rodgers' per game number anyway. I think it's only like 8 yards off.
Right.
And against this secondary in this environment, I feel pretty good about the under.
It's also tough because Jalen Ramsey is the best cornerback on the Rams, and like that's definitely going to be a factor here. And if you had a second wide receiver who was capable of taking advantage, like their other corners are very good, but it's clear Jalen Ramsey is the number one guy. If you had anything else at wide receiver to exploit those other cornerbacks, who again are very good, maybe this offense could do well. But the Packers don't have anything beyond Devontae Adams. So if Jalen Ramsey does well against Devontae, which is a question because Devontae can beat anybody, it's just a bad matchup kind of for Green Bay from an offensive perspective. I think that makes sense with Rodgers in the under for the passing yards. Brandon, what about you? You've also got a bet in this game. Where are you looking for yours?
I'm going to go Cam Akers over 94.5 rushing and receiving yards. It's minus 112. I'm going to throw 2 units on that one.
Okay.
Got a little out over my skis last week with some same game parlays, and I don't think I need to do that to.
What are you trying to say, that we're not real competition?
I think I played it poorly. I think I played it poorly last week. So I'm gonna scale it back. Since breaking out in week 13, Akers is 122 scrimmage yards per game, with 94.2 from rushing alone, 131 a week ago. The Rams in this span, leaning on Akers in the games that he's played, they're 23rd in pass rate when their pre-snap win probability was between 20 and 80%. Green Bay, 21st in adjusted rush defense, according to numberFire's metrics, 21st in rushing success rate allowed to running backs, and 31st in target success rate allowed to running backs. We're seeing just high snaps and usage from Akers. Should be the focal point again. I was considering the over on his rushes, but that went up to 17.5. I feel like the offense is going to flow through Cam Akers well enough for him to get at least 95 total yards.
Right. And I think with 94.5, that's a forgiving enough number where you have some leeway, even if the Rams can't keep pace the entire game. And that's also kind of the thought process with mine. My bet here for this game is Cam Akers to be the first touchdown scorer. That is 7-1 right now over on FanDuel Sportsbook. And the thought process here is you don't need to be competitive for the entire game to score the first touchdown. Cam Akers, in that same sample Brandon was citing, where he's been the lead back, has 50% of the Rams carries or targets inside the red zone in that time. That is the highest number of the weekend by a wide margin. So basically what you're asking is, okay, what are the odds the Rams score first? I'm making this up, 40%. If we allocate half those to Cam Akers, that's 20%. That's roughly, you're getting good odds here on Cam Akers at 7-1. So I think Cam Akers scored the first touchdown here, 7-1, makes a lot of sense. Okay, so recapping here, Brandon has Cam Akers over 94.5 yards in scrimmage, minus 112. That's 2 units. JJ has 2 units on Aaron Rodgers under 257.5 passing yards at minus 112. Now I have Cam Akers to score the first touchdown at 7-1. Again, we'll know a lot here from the first game on Saturday. Let's move into the second game on Saturday. The Ravens at the Bills. The Bills 2.5-point favorites. Total here is 49. And JJ, you're interested in that total because I think we've seen this total come down. It was 50.5. It's now down to 49. What are you seeing with regards to that total in this game?
Yeah, I like the over in this game. I'm going to put 2 units down on it. Neither team here is necessarily fast. They were bottom half in the league in pace, especially Baltimore. So that doesn't really bode all that well. But look, you have 2 quarterbacks who definitely can move the ball and are talented and good. And I always like looking at the quarterback opponents in these matchups if I'm going to look at the over. Buffalo too. Brandon mentioned this last week with the Colts game. How good they've been offensively, especially down the stretch and the amount of points that they're putting up. But Buffalo in general hasn't scored fewer than 26 points in a game since week 8. So you're looking at a scenario where if they're hitting that baseline at the very least, if it is a close game, then all of a sudden you're hitting that over, if it is a field goal game or so. So that's good. That gives you a nice baseline. And I also just like the way these 2 offenses match up against one another. So with Baltimore, you're going to want to attack Buffalo on the ground. Buffalo's secondary is pretty decent, and I don't think that Baltimore necessarily wants to utilize their wide receivers at a really high rate. So I think that there's a chance we see like Trey White just take Marquise Brown a little bit out of this game and whatnot. But then Mark Andrews can roam free and do his thing. And then they're going to be able to run the ball too, as we know the Ravens like to do. And then the opposite side, What we saw last week is really that Baltimore's corners were probably the reason they ended up winning that game. I know they had some situations where, AJ Brown was AJ Brown, but they blanked Corey Davis, as we talked about. They were able to stop the Titans passing attack. And that's one of the strengths of this Baltimore defense when they're all healthy. But if you look at Buffalo, they have the wide receivers to be able to beat them. You have a great complement of three guys who do their jobs very, very well. And so I feel confident that those wide receivers are going to be able to beat those corners. So the matchup itself, I just generally like, so I'm going to go with the over.
Yeah. I think that I've been confused about why this total has been coming down. I think this total's been going down, whereas the Bucs Saints one has been going up, and I feel like they should be going the opposite direction. I don't have anything on that Saints Bucs total right now, but I feel like this one going down is surprising to me. Now, part of the reason that JJ was interested in the over here, Brandon, was because the Ravens have multiple pieces they can use, including Mark Andrews. It sounds like you have interest in Mark Andrews this week as well.
Yeah, I like Andrews for an anytime touchdown at plus 240. Going to go with just one unit on that. In games since week 8, since his return, he leads the team with 27% of the targets, which is 6.9 per game, which is very nice, obviously. 1.4 of those targets are downfield. 1.2 are in the red zone, which is vital, obviously, for scoring touchdowns because, touchdown chances really don't change until you're inside the 10 or targeted inside the 10. But Andrews has 7 red zone targets over the last 4 games. He has more games with multiple red zone targets this year, with 4 with at least 2 red zone targets than he has with 0 red zone targets, just 3. Has 35% of the team's red zone targets in the past 5 weeks, which is tied 3rd among all players on this slate. And he's 10th among all players in red zone opportunity share, which includes like running back rushes. So very involved in the red zone. Buffalo is 24th in target success rate allowed to tight ends. I like the over in this game as well. Not to the, JJ picked that one, but I like Andrews here. I think a lot shapes up for him to get in the end zone.
Yeah, Jack Doyle had 70 yards against this team last week. And if Jack Doyle can go for 70, Mark Andrews can go for 170. I think that's how the math works out with this.
I don't care. I just want the touch. He can get 1 yard. I just need the touchdown.
I think the last time Jack Doyle moved 70 yards was when he was cutting his grass over the summer in his New Balances.
But he did it again against the Bills, and now Mark Andrews gets to face him this week. So Mark Andrews plus 240 for Brandon to shoot for an anytime touchdown, and JJ has the over here at 49 points. Let's move to Sunday's game, and a game that I think is the best one of the weekend. I don't know, maybe that's just me as a Baker Mayfield fanboy. We get a rematch of Mayfield v. Mahomes from all the way back in college. The Chiefs 10-point favorites here. Total is 57, and in order to get to 57, you need the Browns to do something offensively. And I think they can, which is why my next bet for this weekend and my heaviest bet is I'm going to put 3 units on the Browns team total over 23.5 points. It's 23.5 minus 110 for the Browns team total for this weekend. This Browns offense is playing good football. If you look at the full season numbers, they rank 10th in schedule adjusted offensive efficiency based on numberFire's metrics. And that includes the time earlier in the year where they were still getting acclimated to Kevin Stefanski's system. It was before the Odell Beckham injury, and I don't know the reasoning, but they seem to be playing better since then. They've got everyone healthy. Joel Bitonio is officially off the COVID-19 list, as is Bill Callahan. Kadero Hodge is back. Kevin Stefanski is back. This Chiefs defense started the year off really well, finished 15th against the pass, 29th against the rush based on numberFire's metrics. I think the Browns are going to do some damage offensively here. Now, the reason I didn't want to touch the spread is because the idea of betting a spread against Patrick Mahomes when it's the Browns defense scares the poo out of me. And I refuse to ever root against Patrick Mahomes, but betting the Browns over 23.5 points allows me to not root against him. Like, it can just be a shootout and I can enjoy my Sunday. So I'm putting 3 units on over 23.5 for the Browns as my bet for this game.
I like it.
So
yeah. JJ, you have one in this game too, though. What are you feeling from this game between the Chiefs and the Browns?
Yeah, so I was all about doing this last postseason as well.
It worked out well for you in the Super Bowl. I did. Yeah,
it did. Yes. So Patrick Mahomes has an over/under rushing yard line of 18.5 right now. So I'm gonna
19.5. People are on this, JJ.
Oh man,
they've hacked into our Slack again.
I honestly would still take the over on 19 and a half, but I'm gonna drop a unit on that.
Okay.
So Mahomes, I mean, this is really basic, honestly, but we generally see in the playoffs quarterbacks run the ball and be a little bit more DGAF, if you will, with the ball because it's a more important game and they're not as worried about their body. And so, I mean, it's somewhat anecdotal, but numbers bear that out too. You guys mentioned earlier about Josh Allen running as much as he did last week. Patrick Mahomes last season in the playoffs in his 3 games, he averaged 8 carries per game throughout the playoffs. And then, you add in the fact too that CEH is banged up. Maybe he doesn't play. And if that happens, then they might drop back to pass a little bit more. But then on top of that too, they should be dropping back to pass more because they should be able to beat this Cleveland secondary. And he's also hit this number. Well, I don't know anymore if it's 19 and a half, but at least 18 and a half. He's hit that over in 4 of his last 5 games too. So I think this is a pretty safe bet. I probably should have put more units on it, but I feel good about the over.
No, I think you should. It's not just Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson, when the Ravens were in must-win games, he's averaged 12 rush attempts per game since he came back from COVID, and they've had to win all those games. So it's there. Trevor Lawrence in the college football playoff last year, I think it was, ran a bunch. Joe Burrow, the same thing. In these high-leverage situations, you want to lean on the best tools your offense has, and Patrick Mahomes as a rusher is a pretty good tool. I know he's better as a passer, obviously, but I don't want to say underrated because that's a hot takey thing. But we sometimes overlook the value he brings as a rusher when he wants to use that. So I think that one makes a lot of sense. Now, Brandon, while we're on this game, I did want to ask you, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, questionable for Sunday. Any interest in Darrell Williams? I think he's $4,700 on FanDuel for Sunday. Let's say we get confirmed that CEH will not play. Would you go with Darrell Williams, who was their lead back in the game that CEH missed earlier this year?
Yeah, I would definitely consider that just because he would open things up. And honestly, at that salary, I think the way that I would like to play it, again, this is not something I would do in a head-to-head. It's more big tournaments. Disregard the salary almost. Leave salary on the table. Say I'm just going to play Darrell Williams instead of whoever else in the 6,000 range. You're gonna wind up with a more unique lineup that way. If Darrell Williams ends up being really chalky, so I like Darrell Williams in that spot. But I would make sure that I try to do it a little wisely with what I do with those savings.
Yeah, I think it's a situation where you can use him, but make sure you don't overextend yourself because they could get Le'Veon in there. Maybe Darwin Thompson earn some more time.
I hope, but I mean,
the odds that happened are pretty low because they've demonstrated to us time and time again they don't care. So I would say Williams is worthwhile of exposure, but just make sure you are tempering excitement because there are paths to disappointment and because that inherently lowers your exposure to Nick Chubb and Alvin Kamara, and we don't want to do that all too much. Before we move into the late night Sunday game, I do want to announce our giveaway winner for the Sunday Million this week, Garrett Blaylock. Congratulations to you. You have won a seat in the FanDuel Sunday Million for this week. Garrett, use it wisely. Good luck to you. Hopefully we're talking to you as a richer man next week. Another giveaway next week here on the same show, 3:30 p.m. Eastern on Friday. So make sure you tune back in if you did not win this week. Tune back in next week, and congrats to you, Garrett. Good luck. Let's finish up here with the Bucs and the Saints. The Buccaneers, 3-point dogs here. The total is 52. As mentioned, that has been on the rise. Brandon, you're looking at the Bucs and the spread here in this game. What are you seeing here?
Yeah, this one's a little weird just because we have multiple games, obviously, for this divisional rematch, but I have the Buccaneers +3, -105. I've my final 2 units on that. The Saints beat the Bucs by a combined score of 72-26 this year. It has not been particularly close. It does not inspire confidence, but in the first matchup, it was Tom Brady's debut with the team. Mike Evans was dinged up, limited in practice leading in with a knee injury. Week 9 was Antonio Brown's debut. That was kind of started to the dip in Tom Brady's production, and then he's been trending back up. But even if you include that game ever since, the Buccaneers since week 9, in terms trying to find the most relevant sample for these two offenses, the Buccaneers since week 9 have been better when adjusted for opponent than the Saints have been in games started by Drew Brees this year, or even if you want to look at Breeze with Michael Thomas, they've been a better offense, all things considered. Their defenses are pretty similar overall. Given that, this game projects really close for me in my model. I'm getting a field goal here. And according to OddsFire, 56% of the bets and money are on the Tampa Bay spread. So that helps me. It feels a little scary, but I think the data here says that, we can kind of throw out the first two games in this matchup and trust the Buccaneers.
I'm hoping we can throw out those first two matchups too, because my bet in this game, where I'm going to put 1 unit, is on Mike Evans. In those first two games, Mike Evans, 2 receiving yards in the first one, 64 in the second. Both those would lead to an under on his receiving yardage prop for Sunday at 65.5. But I think he'll go over that number of 65.5. And I think that the reason this number is a little bit underwhelming is because you look at the game logs, you look at the history between Mike Evans and the New Orleans Saints. Marshawn Lattimore historically has shut him out. And Nick Underhill, a Saints beat reporter, did a full history. He went through and looked at every snap they'd had against each other in their history. This is the thing, Mike Evans versus Marshawn Lattimore. Now, I think that is tainting the view here of Mike Evans. Mike Evans is getting the most efficient quarterback play he's had his entire life, which is true for the first 2 games this year where he went under this number. But, as Brandon mentioned, he was banged up going to the first one, still dealing with injuries in the second one. It was the first game with Antonio Brown. In the first half of that game, just 1 target for Mike Evans. So if you look at this year, you're not going to bet this number. But Evans has 100 yards in 3 consecutive fully healthy games. He gets downfield looks, so he can get this number in 2 targets effectively if things go well for him. It's an indoor game. I think this Bucs offense should be able to move the football. They did well in a tough matchup this past weekend. So I think it's a good situation to be high on this Bucs passing offense. I just can't get high on Antonio Brown or Chris Godwin because they don't get the downfield looks. If I want to hit an over, I want to be able to get there in a couple of targets. Mike Evans can get me there pretty quickly. So that's why I think that Evans is the guy I want to focus on here, over 65.5 for my final unit for this weekend. Now, JJ, you don't have a bet on this game, but it's an interesting one for sure because I could see it breaking either way. I could see it being a defensive struggle where the defenses, because both defenses are very good, specifically the defensive lines, or I could see Drew Brees and Tom Brady throwing back the clock a bit and slinging it around the yard. How do you see this game playing out?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm in the same boat as you guys in terms of just feeling iffy on either side and seeing both sides. I kind of just lean more on the side that it's going to be more difficult for them to move the ball than it be easy. And I think if that's the case, I might favor the Saints a little bit. But part of that is just this intuition feel type take of how playoff games generally can go, right?
Yeah.
So I don't love what happened earlier this season and the way these teams seem to match up. But anything's possible. I don't really have a strong take, honestly, with this game. I
also do want to check, see if we can get some weird props on Alvin Kamara here, because with Latavius Murray and Taysom Hill banged up, can we get some to score 3+ touchdowns? Here we go. Alvin Kamara is 15-1 to score 3+ touchdowns. With those guys banged up, I'd consider it. He for 2+ touchdowns, he is +320. So
my guess on why the over is move and why the line's moving up the way that it's moving is the fact that these two teams are. I mean, I don't like thinking of defenses this way, but they're quote pass funnel defenses, and if that's the case, and if that's the way this game goes, then you might see more plays, you might see bigger plays and more scoring, and that's the result of that, right? So I'm not that shocked by it. I'm just a little bit fearful of what happens in the trenches.
It does happen indoors too. So
yeah, I like the over here if I had to pick. Honestly, I considered Tampa Bay. Their total was 24.5. I like them to go over. I'm kind of leaning that way more and more. I think defensive performance can be just overstated. And these are two very, very good offenses if you look at their most relevant samples when you adjust for opponents. So I feel pretty good about it. But again, this is the hardest one of the week for me, I think, because it could be
me too
13-10 and I wouldn't be surprised, but it could be 45-42, and I would say that kind of makes sense too.
I feel a lot better about the other 3 games and how I'm just projecting them in general. But this game can go either way, it feels like.
I'm going to hit up John Sheeran, the director of FanDuel Sportsbook, to see if we can get Alvin Kamara to score 7+ touchdowns. I'll talk to him, see if we can arrange that, and I'll let you know. I'll tweet it out if we can get it. Well, that's probably like 16-1 odds that he scores 7 touchdowns. But I'll talk to John. We'll arrange this and get back to you. That is all the time that we have for today, but we'll be back again next week to break down the conference championships from a DFS and a betting perspective. We'll see how these bets play out and see if I can come crashing back to earth one more time, because once was not painful enough. Big thank you to Brandon Gadula and JJ Zachariason for joining me once again, as always, for today. Follow Brandon on Twitter at Gadula13 and follow JJ at Late Round QB. Also, a big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. Enjoy the football. Good luck with your bets. Good luck with your DFS plays. We'll talk to you once again next week for the conference championships. This has been a FanDuel Live Q&A.